This is Innovledia.
Hello and welcome back. In this video, I'm going to guide you through a modeling process in which I'm going to show you some practical application of the tools that you learned in the previous lessons. It will help you understand how these tools really help in our workflow. Before that, let me show you how to maximize your workspace. First, hit Ctrl plus spacebar for full screen mode. And then go to the Windows menu, UI Elements, and click on this checkbox for Toolbox. This will display the Toolbox panel. Then again go to the Windows menu, UI Elements, and select the command line. And then again the Shelf. And lastly, you can click here on the channel box to expand its panel. And that's it. It should give you enough area to work on your 3D models, especially if you have a smaller screen. Okay? So what really is 3D modeling? It is the process of creating three-dimensional representations of an object or a surface. It is the very first step in a 3D workflow, where we begin creating the objects that we either see in real life or just imagine in our minds. Alright? So in this practical, I am going to model mainly three objects here, which is the cup, the plate, and the spoon. First, I am going to model the cup. As this is going to be your very first modeling practical, I would suggest you to observe everything very carefully as I proceed. You have to pay attention to all my steps, what I am doing and how I am doing it. Okay? You must know how to begin so that you don't always have to depend on step-by-step tutorials to make your own 3D objects. Alright? You might also think, why am I not beginning with something bigger and more complex like an excavator or a robot or something that looks fascinating like a spaceship? Why am I beginning with such a simple model instead? Well, as a beginner, you should always start with something that you can finish early. This will help you build up your confidence and prevent confusions. If you can model these simple items properly, you will be able to model all the complex objects that you would like to, using just your fundamental knowledge. So before you begin modeling an object, you have to learn how to break it down into simpler shapes, like cubes, cones, cylinders, spheres, and other shapes. If it is a simple object like this cup, plate, or spoon, you have to look at its major portion. Which shape does it resemble to? Like, you can say that this cup is cylindrical in shape, the plate is circular in shape, and the spoon is somewhat oval in shape with a rectangular handle. You always have to find a starting point from where you can begin creating the rest. Once you understand the profile or shape of the object, you can select the primitive object that should be best to begin with. And eventually, you would be able to transform that primitive object into whatever you are trying to create. As this cup is cylindrical in shape, so I am going to start with a cylinder and keep modifying it unless it becomes a cup. Alright? So, let me first hide these objects and then create a cylinder. It can be of any size as you create. Then I am going to enter some values for the radius, height, and subdivisions so that you get the same result as mine. Okay? Now, I can bring it to the center of the grid by entering 0 for translate x and z, and 2.5 for y, which is half the height of the cylinder. Then, if we dolly in, you will observe that we have triangles at the center. I am going to switch to the edge mode and quickly select every other edge from this section by holding down the Shift key as I select. Once they are selected, I can hit Ctrl plus Delete on my keyboard to delete those edges and make these triangles into quadrilaterals. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom side too. Select the edges, either the odd or the even ones, and hit Ctrl plus Delete to delete them. Now, I'm going to go to the Mesh tools and click on the Insert Edge Loop options. Select this Multiple Edge Loops option and enter 1. And click on any of the edges on this last loop of faces to insert an edge loop exactly at the center. Okay? I inserted this loop to divide this surface. I have to create the hollow portion of the cup. And for that, I am going to select this entire area on top till here and extrude it down to create the hollow space. So, I am going to select all of these faces on top except for the last loop. To select these face loops, first you have to select a face. Hold down the Shift key and then double click on the adjacent face to select the loop in that particular direction. The second selection determines the direction in which the loop has to be selected. In the same way, I can select the other loops too by selecting a face and then double-clicking on the second face. And then go to the top view and select this entire section of faces at the center by dragging a rectangular marquee over them. Then go back to the perspective view and switch to the wireframe mode. And deselect these faces on the bottom part by holding down the Control button and dragging a marquee over that region. The Control button is for removing anything from the current selection, while the Shift key is for adding to the selection. Alright, I can switch back to the shaded mode. Now with these faces selected, go to Edit Mesh and click on Extrude. Push it down in -Y. Go to the front view and try to match the depth of the bottom to that of the sides. This is sufficient. And enter this value for local translate Z so that you get the same result as the model yours. Now, on the -Z axis, I am going to select a face. Make sure these faces are perpendicular to this axis. That is the very reason why I had used a value of 26 for the subdivisions of the axis. So what I have to do is, with that face selected, go to Edit Mesh and click on Extrude. Move it outward and enter this value. This is going to be the handle of the cup, okay? I am going to switch to the side view and select the Insert Edge Loop options, set it to relative distance and use it to insert an edge loop in such a way that it almost forms a square. Then I can switch back to the perspective view. And select this face and this one here and hit the delete button on the keyboard. I deleted them so that I can bridge this part and the body to complete the handle. In order to bridge, I have to double click on the edge to select the loop and then do the same thing here holding down the Shift key. Once they are selected, go to Edit Mesh and click on Bridge. Increase the divisions to give the handle a smooth curvature. Alright? Now, if we look at the top, you will notice that the corners are sharp. Real-life objects do not have extreme sharp corners except for tools and weapons. So, we can add some bevel at least to this corner, the one on the inner side. Double-click on the edge to select this entire loop. Go to Edit Mesh and click on Bevel and leave it to default values. Okay? Now, it might appear as complete And you may be thinking, why did I model everything like it is built of some rectangular blocks? Well, initially, we build our models this way, with one thing in mind, that later we are going to make its surface smooth, either by pressing 3 on keyboard or by practically adding subdivisions using the smooth option. Okay? I'm going to press 3 for now. You can see, as I pressed 3 on my keyboard, we are looking at the smoother version of our model. And at some places, especially around the corners, it is smoothing more than it is required. This is not what a real cup looks like, right? So, in order to hold the corners from smoothing too much, we have to add resolution to the mesh, which means adding more edge loops in between these existing loops. You don't have to add it everywhere, but mainly around the corners. I can use the Insert Edge Loop or the Offset Edge Loop tool for that. Let me select the Insert Edge Loop by clicking on this square icon for options. Always keep an eye on the options I select. I can enter one edge loop at the top and one around it so that they both hold this corner from smoothing too much. Then I can place 5 edge loops on the interior faces to hold the surface from being pulled in too much due to smoothing. I'm going to switch to the side view and place a few edge loops around the handle too, where we have corners that we want to preserve. And insert 2 equal edge loops here to subdivide this top section just like the rest. Now I'm going to use the Offset Edge Loop tool. Make sure you have this equal option checked within its options and place 2 edge loops equally from either side of this corner and around this corner on the inside. The closer you place the loops, the tighter and sharper the corners will be. Alright? Now we can simply press 3 on our keyboard to see the final result. Okay? This is good. You can always take a look around the corners to see if they are smoothing correctly. Alright? So, we have successfully modeled our cup. We can hide this object for now by creating a new layer, entering a name, then adding this object to that layer by selecting it and right-clicking on the layer and selecting Add Selected Objects. Once added, we can toggle the visibility of the layer using this switch. V means visible. Empty means invisible. Alright? I'm going to keep the cup hidden for now so that we can clear this area for modeling other objects. Okay? So, as we have finished modeling our cup, let us move on to modeling the plate. As you know, the plate is circular in shape, so there are many possibilities of choosing your desired primitive object. You can choose anything that is circular in shape and keep modifying it unless it looks like a plate. I'm going to use a sphere, which for now might feel a little odd to you, but you will understand once I show you how it was a good choice for this purpose. So let me create a sphere and set its radius so that you get a similar result as mine. And then I'm going to switch to the face mode and select more than half of the sphere up to this portion. You can use the front or side views to be accurate. Once perfectly selected, hit the delete button to delete all those faces. Now what you see is just the remaining portion, which appears to be black from the inside, because a face has two sides, a front and a back. Only the front side has all the shading and the back side doesn't, due to which it appears black. And the back side of faces generally lie on the inside of objects. Okay? Now, if we look at the bottom, we are going to find these triangles again, which we have to turn into four-sided polygons by deleting every other edge from this section. Once done, go to the Object mode, and while it is selected, go to the Modify menu and click on Center Pivot and set its Translate X and Z values to 0. Then switch to the Scale tool and scale it down from top to make it somewhat more flat. You can also enter a value directly for the Scale Y attribute. Alright? Now keeping it selected, go to Edit Mesh, click on Extrude and push the Z handle down and enter this value here. Then switch to the Face mode and select all the faces on the top inner portion here up to the second edge loop. Go to Edit Mesh and click on Extrude. Select the Move tool, switch to the Side View and Wireframe mode and push it down and keep it just above this first slanting edge here. Okay? I can switch back to the perspective view. Now, I can create its circular base by extruding a portion from the bottom side. For that, first I am going to insert two edge loops on the bottom side between these first two inner edge loops, which will create a loop of faces that I can extrude to create the base. Let me go to the Mesh tools, select the Insert Edge Loop options and make sure this relative distance is selected. And then just click and drag here on these edges to insert the loop, right here, and another one here, alright? Now we have got this loop of faces, which we have to select. Once selected, go to Edit Mesh and click on Extrude. And using the Move tool, just push it down vertically. Switch to the Side View and keep it closer to this bottom curvature of the plate. Okay? These faces are currently slanted, so I can straighten all these bottom faces using the Scale tool. Just activate it, hold on the J key on the keyboard and click and drag this green handle down. This is going to straighten all the faces at an instant. Let me switch to the perspective view. Now, we just have to insert an edge loop closer to the stop extrusion right here to prevent this corner from being stretched due to smoothing. Go to the Mesh tools, select the Insert Edge Loop tool and click and drag here to insert the loop. Then go to the options for Insert Edge Loop and select this multiple edge loops and set it to 1. And just click here on these edges on the side of the plate to insert an edge loop at the center. Okay, it is done. Now we can press 3 to smooth and check whether or not our model is looking correct. Alright, so with this our plate is complete. We can hide this object by adding it to this layer. Make sure the object is selected. Right click on the layer and select Add Selected Objects. Well, the object disappeared because the visibility is currently off for that layer. So we can always bring them back by clicking here on this switch. Okay? The plate is currently below the cup, so we have to bring it up using the Move tool. You have to place it very carefully using all the orthographic views and make sure the cup sits right on the surface and not inside the surface of this plate. Okay? So it is done. Let me turn this layer off. Now let us create our final object, which is the spoon. The first section of the spoon is oval in shape, while its handle is more like a rounded rectangle. We have to begin from some point. I am going to begin from this circular section first. Create a sphere and enter this radius so that you get a similar result. Then delete all the faces from this fourth edge loop, leaving these 3 face loops behind along with their triangles. Go to the object mode and go to modify menu and click on center pivot and just bring it above the grid and set its x and z value to 0. Now we have to make it oval in shape. We can use the scale tool for that. You can just squeeze it from the top and also from this side and stretch a little from this side. Just keep an eye on the axis. You can just enter these values here to be accurate. Alright. We also have to create the handle, and for that we can switch to the edge mode and select these 2 edges. Then switch to the top view. Go to Edit Mesh and click on Extrude and use the Move tool to move them 10 units on the negative z-axis. Switch back to the perspective view. Now we can simply delete these edges to make these triangles into 4-sided polygons. Select every other edge from this section and then hit Ctrl+Delete on the keyboard. Now go to the object mode and keep this object selected, then go to Edit Mesh and click on Extrude. If you look a little closer, you will see a little icon here. It enables us to switch these handles from local axis to global axis. Okay? So we have to click on it to switch to the global direction. And then we can push this Y handle down to add some depth to the spoon. You can also directly enter this Y value here to do the same as mine. Alright? Now go to the Mesh Tools and click on the Insert Edge Loop options and make sure this multiple option is selected. We have to just click on this edge here and here to insert 2 edge loops. Now the problem is that if we apply smoothing to this mesh, we will notice subtle deformations on the surface due to these edges present on the circular region. It will be more visible as we are going to add materials to it in a later lesson. So what I am going to do is switch to the top view, enable the wireframe mode, and double click on an edge to select this entire loop. Hold down the Shift key and double click here on this to select this loop. And then hold down the Control button on the keyboard and drag a marquee around this section to deselect these edges and these edges here, and hit Ctrl+Delete on the keyboard. This will delete all those selected edges along with their vertices, okay? Now we have to insert an edge loop here. By selecting the Insert Edge Loop options and make sure the relative distance is selected. And click here to insert a loop. Now switch to the face mode and select these 4 faces on top. And go to Edit Mesh, click on Extrude. Switch to Global Handles, then pull it up and enter this value here for Translate Y. Then we can switch to the Vertex mode and go to the top view. Using the Move tool, select and pull these vertices up and down to add a little curvature to this end. Now if we press 3 on keyboard, you will notice that the corners are getting too soft. We need to make them little tighter by adding edge loops around this corner and on these areas as well. So just select the edge loop tool and insert an edge loop here. And then go to the edge loop options and select these multiple edge loops and enter 15 here. And click here on this handle. This will add 15 edge loops on the handle to hold the surface tight, alright? Press 3 again to observe. Now the handle is blending too much within this circular region due to smoothing. To hold it and make it appear little prominent, we have to add an edge loop within the last face loop both on top and on the bottom, okay? Go to the Insert Edge Loop options and enter 1 here. And then click here to add the first loop. And click here to add an edge loop here as well. We have to do the same thing on the bottom side too. Now simply press 3 and it looks great, alright? We can toggle this layer to bring back our cup and plate here. We simply have to put this spoon inside this cup. Okay? Let me first rotate it along the y-axis. Then along x, you can simply enter these values. Then switch to the front view and use the move tool to place it within the cup by moving it on X and Y. We can also isolate the spoon and the cup by selecting them and pressing Ctrl+1. This will isolate both the objects. Now make sure you make the spoon touch the bottom corner of the cup and its top surface. Then press Ctrl+1 to exit from the isolation mode and switch back to the perspective view. And here we are. The set is complete. So, in order to model anything, you have to first study its topography or its anatomy to understand the different parts and flow of their surfaces. And then you have to break it down into simpler shapes. You have to look at the major portion from where you can begin creating the rest. Then you can simply choose the primitive object that should be best to begin with and keep modifying it unless you transform it into that object. In case of complex models, you may need to use more than one primitive object and later merge them together as one object. Okay? So with these simple steps in mind, you can model anything you want. Alright? So with this, let us move on to our next lesson. See you in the next video.